is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. We're back in the fold with a 9-game slate here. We had a 5-gamer yesterday. Absolute slop fest there. We did have a winner in the chat. I'm sorry, I forget your username already. I'm sure Cliffy has it, though, because he is
Hawkeye McNutt on DraftKings and Hawkeye in the Discord.
Hawkeye McNutt, did you say?
Yeah.
That's a great name.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know what GPP that is. I think maybe the 333. I don't know. Or maybe the 20. I'm not sure.
I forgot to ask him, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, needed the Blackhawks last night for sure. Marchenko scored that shorty, had the shot bonus. So Spencer Knight thrusting himself into the early season Vezina talk for sure. Not that anyone cares, but I broke my streak of 5 consecutive cashes because I decided to stack the Kraken and the Canucks. But we're back at it tonight. We have boots on the ground in Dallas. If he's around, he probably is off trying to find another AI girlfriend. But Frostback is going to be at the game tonight, but helping me to – and let's be serious here. That game is the pivotal game on this slate, and we'll get to that when we get there. But joining me to break it down in a Stars jersey, maybe it's a Hull jersey. Slim Cliffy, what's going on?
No, this one's just a blank name bar. Odd slate last night. I ended up with a 2x night. I mean, we'll take those. The frustrating part was I talked yesterday about a 6-man Washington Onslaught stack. I think if you pick the right guys, it probably would have worked out. My problem was I put in Protas instead of Beauvillier. I would have made that swap, taken out McMichael, had a double defense, then I think we're looking at something different. But I mean, cash is cash. That's the way. Certainly can't complain about that. Tonight is a different night. We have the St. Louis Blues again. They're right back on the board. So, I agree with you that Dallas and Anaheim feels like the pivotal game. If there's like a 1B to that 1A, it's St. Louis heading into Buffalo. So we'll talk about that. It's a pretty interesting slate because, as you mentioned, that Dallas-Anaheim game is pivotal, namely because we'll get to it, but Dallas is like far and away the number one top 2 stack on the board here tonight. And sometimes you see that on like a 4-game slate where like there's just a bunch of mediocre teams and then like Colorado's there. You rarely see that on a 9-game slate where they're the runaway number 1 stack of the night. So and they're facing the number 1 scoring team in the league. So yeah, it's a pretty pivotal game. Makes me fairly excited to break these 9 games down.
Yeah, and I see Frostback asking Bobby Boone for a band. That's a road you don't want to go down. But let's get into this slate. Let's start it off. At least we're not starting with the Blues, but that game is a 6.5. Let's start it off with there are many candidates for this game sucks of the night. This one is one of them. It didn't make the final list, but Ottawa Senators, the 3.2 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 2.9. Boston going Pastrnak, Geeky, Kuznetsov. I think I got that right this time. Zacha, Arvidsson, Middlestat. I'm not even sure why I mentioned them. Stützle, Batherson, Cousins, Pinto, Giroux, Amadio, Cousins, Grieg, Perron. Boston won 17K, 9.6% top 2 stack, 9% projected ownership. There's a lot of lines in that 17K range that I like here tonight. Boston's not particularly one of them, even though they almost have a double-digit top 2 stack. And it's for the reason, like, I kind of alluded to it yesterday when I was talking about stuff. Like, this is a bad matchup against a goalie that's struggling. It's not like it's a good 5-on-5 matchup against a good goalie. This is a bad 5-on-5 matchup. But Olmark's been struggling. But if you look at Olmark, the back of the baseball card numbers, like he's going to regress to the mean at some point, and he is a very good goalie. Inhaling the copium for my best puck team since I have a lot of
it's Allmark versus Korpisalo, right? Yeah, Swayman's not starting tonight.
It is Korpisalo tonight. So, like, again, like with Boston, it's going to be a broken record. I'm completely fine with the Pastrnak one-off. Don't think I will be full stacking a Kuznetsov line at 17K, despite him making us eat our words the other night. Like, they're going to see a fair bit of that Stützle, Batherson, Cousins line, and I know it's a small-ish sample, but like they've played 4 games and they've been pretty good defensively. Even if they see other lines, like the Cousins line has been fine defensively, the Pinto line's been fine defensively. It's just been their goalies, which have been a mess. So outside of Pastrnak one-off, I'm out on Boston. The Ottawa side's a little more interesting because they have a 3.2 road total, which is tied for the highest on the slate with the Caps, which we'll get to in a little bit. I'm not super keen on stacking a Nick Cousins line, but they are only 15,100. You could turn it into a power play stack, like leave off Cousins, add in Grieg, add in Cousins, something like that. I think that's an avenue you could go down if you're building in the mid-range because Cousins is 2,700, but Grieg is only 500 more. So you could do a full power play stack for 15,600. But if you need a filler line here tonight, I think going down to Pinto, Giroux, Amadio, you don't need to full stack them, but they're 11K. They're going to see the middle 6 of the Bruins, and like it's just not good. It hasn't been good all season. So I don't mind Pinto, Giroux, or Pinto, Amadio, 2-man if you need like a filler, if you're doing expensive stuff with Dallas or something like that. So kind of mum on Boston outside of Pastrnak. I think there's things to like on the Ottawa side. I don't think I'm going to get there in single entry in the power play stack, but I would consider Pinto Giroux as a filler.
Yeah, you mentioned how good Ottawa's been defensively at 5-on-5 or how bad of a 5-on-5 matchup it is for Boston. You're right. Ottawa, 6th lowest expected goals against per 60 in the league at 5-on-5. They've been really good. As much as we make fun of Joel Hofer and Jordan Binnington on the show, and we will, and we'll keep doing it. It's Linus Ullmark that is dead last by goals saved above expected in the NHL. On a per minute basis, I think he's 4th worst. He's been terrible. He's not going to keep being this bad, but I said it yesterday about the St. Louis goaltending. It's like, until he stops being this bad, why not keep picking on him? Like, that's just kind of the way that I feel about Boston. And as good as the Sens are at 5-on-5, they don't have a good penalty kill. We mentioned that before. Like, they are very, very bad at clearing out around the net front on the PK. They give up a ton of shots around the crease. That's not necessarily prime time for, guys like Arvidsson or Pastrnak or whatever. But it does allow their top power play guys to kind of get, some of those greasy goals, or at least a chance to get some of those greasy goals. Like, I don't really mind Boston one here at 17K. I don't particularly want to play Kuznetsov, but it's still, 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. If this was a smaller slate, I would probably be giving a lot more consideration to Boston. But as you mentioned, there are a ton of lines. Like, I think there's like 10 lines or 9 lines between 16 and 18K here tonight. There's 2 of them come from the Anaheim Ducks. So we definitely have to keep them in consideration. There's also Buffalo that we do have to keep in consideration. There's Vegas that we're going to talk about at the end of the slate. There are other options. In a nutshell, I don't really mind Boston, just because it's one of those things, like, until Ullmark shows that he's not going to be one of the worst goalies in the NHL this year, yeah, I feel like you can kind of pick on him, right? Like, it's not like he was, like, here's the thing. It's not like Ullmark was great last year, right? Like,
no goalie is good in Ottawa. It's just a fact.
That's just one of the things. It's, Ullmark last year, 908 save percentage, like, that's good because the league average was, I think, 901 or something like that. But it's not like you're facing a great 5-on-5 defense with Hellebuck in net or something like that. So I don't mind Boston one. I feel like if I got to 5 max, 20 max, that's when I really started considering them. Single entries, I think there are other lines in that price range I'd rather go to. On the Ottawa side, I do think Ottawa kind of technically has 3 playable lines. I think the way that I will be building tonight, I'd have more interest in the depth lines. One of the big reasons is believe it or not, that Boston second line has not been that bad defensively. The Zacha Middlestat line, and that's the one they've been using a bit more in shutdown roles lately. One way or the other, Pinto, Giroux, and Amadio are not going to see any of that Zacha Middlestat matchup. And Boston's one of the most penalized teams in the league. 3.9 times shorthanded per game this season. It's the 3rd most in the league behind Winnipeg and Los Angeles. Meanwhile, Ottawa is drawing the 5th most power plays per game. And Ottawa, they do split their power play units a little bit. It's 60-40, 65-35. This isn't like the top power play unit gets 75 or 80% of the power play time. And you do get Pinto. You do get a couple guys on the second power play unit. So I honestly don't mind Pinto, Giroux, and Amadio as a filler here tonight. That's kind of my interest in Ottawa. My interest is in their depth lines. And like I said, I think Boston 1 is fine. But for me, that'd be more 20 max and above.
Let's talk about the Blues. St. Louis Blues, 3 total. Heading into Buffalo, the Sabres, 3.4 total. Oh, boy. St. Louis is scratching Kyrou, hoping it's because they're trading him to the Rangers for Panarin. But
maybe. And if I'm not mistaken, Oscar Sundqvist left the game late last night after blocking a shot. So are they going to go 11-7?
It's certainly possible. And Logan, he had himself a game last night. Wow, he is terrible. But the only St. Louis line that didn't get run out of the building last night against Washington was Thomas Buchnevich-Snuggerud. But with Kyrou out and Sundqvist possibly hurt, no idea what the lines are going to be. Which is kind of unfortunate because, let's not pretend that the Sabres are some juggernaut defensively. And the Blues do have a 3 total here. Buchnevich has had a terrible start to the season, though. So it's Thomas isn't shooting. Buchnevich looks bad. Don't know what the lines are going to be. So it's just the trifecta of what are we even discussing? Snuggerud went off. P.S. Suter went off, I guess. But, without knowing what the lines are going to be or if they're going 11-7 or 12-6, I just don't know. And they're back-to-back on the road on a 9-game slate. So it's do I really want to wait on Blues news on the slate? Not really. Rather watch Blues Clues than wait for Blues news, if you know what I'm saying. On the Buffalo side, is it Pius or Pius? I don't know. I'm probably saying it wrong. It's probably
I think it's Pius.
Yeah. He's not Pius, I think would be Greek god type thing here. But Buffalo going Thompson, Tuck, McLeod, Quinn, Isaac Rosen, Ostlin, and then Doan down on the third line with Greenway and Krebs. This is kind of unfortunate. It's just there's a couple things that really annoy me about the Sabres right now. It's that Alex Tuck isn't on the top power play. And this is a really good power play matchup. The Blues don't take a ton of penalties, but I guess it doesn't really matter because McLeod, Tuck, and Thompson should have their way here tonight. It is Joel Hofer in net, I think. So, listen, both these Blues goalies have been terrible. The Buffalo top line, McLeod, Tuck, Thompson, 17,300, 10.3% top 2, 10.8% projected ownership. This is one of those lines I prefer over Boston 1. It's just a better matchup, back-to-back on the road. The Blues are coming off getting absolutely curb stomped by the Capitals. It's unfortunate that only Thompson is on the top power play unit. I guess you could leave off McLeod and add in, a Doan or a Quinn or a Rosen and do a 3-wing, and you can do a 2-center build with Hischer and Hughes or That's always the first one that comes to mind on a 2-center. So, but for me, I'm fine with just going Buffalo 1. You could do some sort of power play stack, but I think they'll be fine at 5-on-5. So Buffalo 1 for me. If you want to go to Ostlund, Rosen, Quinn, you get 2 guys on the top power play unit for 8,700. They get the depth of the Blues, which is an oxymoron. So I'm fine with that as a super cheap filler. But for me, it's Buffalo 1 in this game.
Yeah, I'll echo what you said about Buffalo 3. There's that one Dallas line we'll talk about later. Like if you are playing them Vegas power play stack or something like that for some reason, you do need a sub 10K line. Like I think they are playable. I don't know if anybody's watched the St. Louis. I mean, set aside the St. Louis goaltending. I don't know if anybody's watched the St. Louis Blues when their second and third defense pairs are on the ice. Every time I do, like it's just Benny Hill music running through my head. So like I'm not worried about defensive matchups that they're going to see. The reason to play Buffalo 1 is the same reason to play Washington yesterday. It's like, until these guys show that they're not going to be, amongst the bottom 5 goalies in the NHL this season, why not just keep picking on them? I don't have any reservations about playing Buffalo 1 here tonight. Like you said, I wish we had more guys on the top power play unit. It's another one of those cases where I don't think I can make a Buffalo stack and leave off Josh Stone. You can make an argument he's been their best forward this season. And the one thing that sucks is he's not getting a ton of ice time. It's like 15, 16 minutes. He probably should be playing 18 to 19 minutes by this point. But, a top line, throw in Josh Stone. If you want to take out Tuck and put in Doan or something like that, I think that's okay. But Tuck gets a fair bit of ice time. I think you'll want to keep him in. Maybe just add Josh Doan. Like I said, I think, there's a reason why Buffalo has a 3.4 total. If this game is like 3 weeks ago, they probably have like a 2.8 or something like that. And it's because just how bad St. Louis's goaltending keeps being. On the St. Louis side, like, I don't want to say like in the first week of November, this feels like a make or break game. But this is a team on a huge slide. You're going into Buffalo. Buffalo is missing what? Half their forwards or something like that.
It's a bunch.
And Buffalo is a bottom 10 defensive team by expected goals against and goals against at 5-on-5 as it is. If this feels like one of those games, like if they get stomped like 5-0 or something like that, like there are going to be some changes. Like, like Jordan Kyrie's played his last game for the Blues type of changes. So, whether they come out or not, we'll see. But Thomas Buchnevich, Snuggerud, 14K, like it's kind of hard to pass up, right? Like the Dahlin Samuelson pairing is up to 95 minutes together. They're at 3.1 expected goals. The second pair of Power and Timmins, they're at 115 minutes. They're at 3.6 expected goals against. Buffalo is a bad defensive team, right? It's just that St. Louis has looked terrible for most of the season. They have had their games where they've scored goals. They put up 4 against Calgary. They put up 5 against Vancouver. They put up 4 against Utah, 4 against Detroit. Like they have been able to score goals. It's just they're giving up like 5 goals a game, so it's making them look pretty bad. I kind of like Thomas Buchnevich, Snuggerud as long as that's a line. If they're not, then it's probably whoever Pia Suter's playing with. Like if it's like Suter, Holloway, Dvorsky or something like that, like I think that would be fine as well. I kind of have some interest in St. Louis here because I do think, generally speaking, St. Louis is the better team. It's just that their goaltending tandem has been like AHL level is putting it nicely. So I'm in on St. Louis 1. I could dip down to St. Louis 2, depending on when that looks like at warm-up.
Yeah, if I was Chris Drury, I'd be calling Doug Armstrong, say, hey, you can have Carson Soucy for a conditional 7th-round pick in 2057. And, there you go. There's your fix. Minnesota Wild with a 2.8 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.1. Minnesota going Kaprizov, Rossi, Johansson, Boldy, Eriksson, Ek, Tarasenko. Carolina going Aho, Svechnikov, Hall, Jarvis, Stahl, Martinuk, Ehlers, Stankov, and Blake. This is an interesting game.
And Keandre's back.
Keandre is back. It's not like the best person to come back. They need Slavin back, but Keandre definitely helps that blue line. This is not a good matchup for Minnesota, even with Slavin out, because they are very power play dependent. And even with all these guys out, they still have an elite penalty kill. I don't have a ton of interest in Minnesota here. They're terrible at 5-on-5. Listen, Stahl, Martinook, Jarvis, or Stahl and Martinook this season haven't been like an elite lockdown pair, but they're still good enough to take out the offensive lack of prowess of Rossi, Kaprizov, and Johansson. So I'm out on them. If you happen to get to Tarasenko, Joe Eriksson, Ek, Boldy in MME, I guess you could leave it. But like the problem is there's 17,800. There's probably 4 or 5 other lines in the 16 to 18K range that I like better. So it's just tough for me to get there, even if I'm 20 maxing. So I'm probably out on Minnesota here. My interest is on the Carolina side. Like Minnesota's has not been great defensively at 5-on-5, and it's not a super big surprise here because their best defensive center is carrying a giant boat anchor named Vladimir Tarasenko on his wing. That third line with Vinny Hinostroza, like if you look up journeyman in the dictionary, you'll see a big picture of his mug. So like the only line worth a damn defensively is Rossi, Marcus Johansson, Kirill Kaprizov, and they're going to be occupied by Stahl, Jarvis, and Martinook. So that second line of Ehlers, Stankoven, and Blake at 13,500 is going to see some pretty good 5-on-5 matchups here. They're coming in at 5.3% projected ownership, but, we talked about how good Stankoven and Blake have been. They get a ton of 5-on-5 time. You add someone like Nikolai Ehlers, that line is going to start cooking. Ehlers scored last game. First goal was a hurricane. Maybe that breaks the dam. So, I do like Carolina 2 here. If you want to go to Aho, Svechnikov, Hall for $300 more and half the ownership, I think that's fine for the reason that the Minnesota penalty kill is atrocious. And you get 2 of the 3 guys on that line on the top power play unit. I think you could leave off Hall and add in like a Jarvis or add in the Ehlers or something like that, make it a power play stack. But if I had a 5-on-5 stack of line, it would be Ehlers, Stankoven, and Blake.
Yeah, you mentioned the Carolina penalty kill. Like Jacob Slavin's only played like 1.5 games this season, and Carolina is 4th by expected goals against per 60 on the penalty kill. Shot attempts against their 2nd, shots against their 1st. It's like what this team does on the BK is insane. And we know how reliant Minnesota's been on the power play. It's weird because it always feels like Carolina has like 2 home games a year where they're playing a team that's not that great, and then Carolina loses 7-2 or something like that.
That was Tampa last year.
Yeah. I always think about that game where Antti Ranta had more goals against than saves. It was like 8 goals against on 14 shots or something like that.
Also Tampa.
That's right. Anyways, I'm not saying that that's this game. I just always have that in the back of my mind whenever at least a decent team is going in. But like Minnesota's really not been that decent. They've been heavily power play reliant. It's a terrible power play matchup. So yeah, I'm out on the Wild. With Carolina, the thing with stacking Carolina is Minnesota's like by far the least penalized team in the NHL. They're at 2.1 per game. I think the next closest team's at 2.5 times shorthanded per game. So like they're taking by far the fewest penalties. So like I'm not super concerned about power play correlation as far as any of the Carolina lines go. I would probably want to play either the Aho line or the Stankoven line, just because that Stahl line, they are solid offensively. A few times a year, those expected goals will turn into actual goals, but they typically have a very low shooting percentage. But those Carolina top 2 lines are going to see a lot of the middle 6 from the Wild, and they're not good. We just went over how bad Buffalo is at defensively at 5-on-5. Minnesota's been worse. And it's really strange because Minnesota went like 12 years in a row being a top 5 defensive team at 5-on-5, and they're bottom 7 or bottom 8 in the league so far this season. For me personally, I would probably go to Carolina 1, Aho, Svechnikov, and Hall. I just think Aho's probably going to get the most ice time. I think Taylor Hall is fairly underrated. They're coming in with less than half the ownership, and they're only $300 more expensive. 2.2% ownership against 5.3% for that Ehlers-Stahl-Stankoven line. I think both lines are firmly in play. For me, I would go to Carolina 1, and I'm out on Minnesota. I just can't get there with the Wild in this matchup.
Yeah, me either. Montreal Canadiens with a 2.8 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 3.2. Devils going Hughes, Bratt, Nason, Hischier, Meyer, Mercer. Montreal going Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Demidov, Newhook, Kapanen, Bolduc, Gallagher, and Doc. It's pretty should be a pretty good game here. I do have some interest in both sides, despite there not being a lot of ownership here. Now, Devils are at home, so they're going to send out Hischier, Meyer, Mercer against the Suzuki line. That line's been fine-ish defensively, not as good as a Hischier, Meyer, not Dawson Mercer line. It's always Dawson Mercer who's screwing everything up. So, like I think Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky are fine, but the problem is, like, they're 19K. It would be a conversation if they were, 17 and change, like 17 and 8, like the Joe Eriksson Ek line. Like, then it's more of a conversation in single entry. At 19K, it's not a good power play matchup either, which is another reason why I don't think I'm going to get there in single entry at 19K. I think, if you get to them in MME, like 20 max, 150 max, certainly fine. If you need a cheap filler like Doc, Gallagher, Bolduc, they've been good, but as Cliffy and I were or Cliffy was telling me more than we were discussing it, that like they don't really keep them together a lot. But at 8,400, if you're power play stacking Vegas or whatever, you can take like a 2-man at Doc and Bolduc. I think that's fine. So like I don't mind Montreal 1. It's just a price and not a great power play matchup, so it's more of a 20 to 150 max for me. On the flip side, with Meyer, Hischier, Mercer occupying that Cole Caulfield Suzuki matchup, I think, like, yes, that Doc line has been fine, but like that Hughes Bratt line will still see some Newhook, Demidov, Kapanen. They haven't been great. Montembeault hasn't been great. The one issue I have is because they're 18-9. It's a couple issues.
Isn't it? I'm pretty sure Dobish is starting tonight.
Dobish, yeah. Okay, so Dobish has been better. There's still two problems. Nason isn't on the top power play unit, and Bratt's ice time. So it's kind of a similar situation at 18,900. I think I'd rather play the Hughes line than the Suzuki line in single entry. I just don't know if I'm going to get there because, like, I know Bratt's ice time has been coming up, but there was like a 4 or 5 game stretch where he's playing like 15 minutes. And that's just a lot to pay for 15 minutes. So I think you could do some sort of power play stack if you wanted to. Do like Hughes, Hischier, Mercer, and go about your day. But like if I had to use line in the Devils or the Canadiens, it would be both top lines. But I think it's more of 20 max for me.
Yeah. I do some editing at a different site, and one article I was editing today, the guy made a good point that the New Jersey Devils are being priced tonight like there's some sort of defensive juggernaut. Like they have a worse expected goals against and goals against rate than the Habs do this season. The top pair of Dougie Hamilton and Jonas Siegenthaler, whenever they have gotten minutes together, has struggled. I do think 19K is a pretty hefty price to pay for Montreal, especially when they're running their 12 forwards and Kirby Doc's in the lineup, Caulfield and Slavkovsky play roughly 18 minutes, Suzuki plays 20. This isn't a case where, I mean, it can happen in a single game. Things, can change on a dime, but it's not, we shouldn't expect Slavkovsky and Caulfield to play like 19, maybe 20 minutes, Suzuki at like 23 or something like they did a lot in the second half of last season. So 19K, like, I don't know. Like, we'll talk about Vegas later. The thing is like, to me, Montreal is kind of in a tier of their own here tonight. And the reason is that Dallas, we'll talk about Dallas later. Dallas is over $3,000 more expensive. Just a bit above Montreal is Tampa Bay, and I have no interest in playing Tampa Bay here tonight. So and I have no interest in playing Vegas. So if you take out Dallas, who are in their own pricing tier, and then you take out the Tampa Bay Vegas sides, it's basically Dallas gap, Montreal gap, then everybody else. So to get to the Habs, like, you have to really have a big reason to get there, and I just don't. It's right. Like, it's not like this is a 19K line that might play like 18 to 20 minutes at the high end for Suzuki, like going into Buffalo or something like that, right? Like, I do think New Jersey is better defensively than they've shown, even though they haven't shown that through the first month. All that's to say, like, I'm not against playing Montreal. For me, they're kind of like Boston here. I throw them in the 20 max bin, where if I'm 20 maxing, maybe I have one lineup with them. 150 max, maybe I have, like 3 or 4 get over the field and then be on my way. Honestly, my big interest in Montreal is that Doc line. Doc, Gallagher, Bolduc. They're not going to get a ton of ice time, but a couple things. One, they're perfectly correlated on the second power play unit. With Demidov on the top unit, I'm worried that that's going to start being like a 75-25 or 70-30 power play split. Typically this season, those units haven't been. It's been closer to like 60-40, 65-35. But I mean, we'll see what happens. You can put them in with your, if you are playing a Vegas power play or you are playing Dallas or something like that. They do fit. They've been really good this season. 73 shot attempts, 4.6 expected goals for per 60 at 5-on-5. Kirby Dach is at 1.2 individual expected goals per 60. Brendan Gallagher's at 1 individual expected goals per. Like, they've been creating well. I don't mind them as a filler. I think my interest is more on the New Jersey side. I think, as you mentioned, that Hughes line going up against the middle six for Montreal, especially going up against the Kapanen line, especially going up against the third pair, like, that's where they can really be had. I do worry about Bratt's ice time. As you said, he'd really only been playing around under 17 minutes a game. Up until very recently, the last couple games, he's been at like 18 and a half, 19 and a half minutes, which is more where we'd expect him. I would probably just go to New Jersey 1. You want to take off Nason, make it more of a power play stack. I think that's fine. Montreal's penalty kills middle of the road at best. They take penalties at an above average rate. So I would probably go, like, if you want to go double center stack, Hischier, Hughes, Bratt, I think that's fine. But that top line for New Jersey over the last couple of years, Bratt and Hughes, 74 shot attempts, 3.4 expected goals. We know how good Jack Hughes has been already this season. I think my favorite line in this game is New Jersey 1, but I don't mind that Bolduc, Gallagher, Doc line as a super cheap filler for your Dallas and Vegas stacks and things like that.
Yeah, and Devils are doing that stupid thing with Luke Hughes again, but, you got to let them work through that. I mean, it's not stupid, but, like, Dougie's clearly better on the power play. Washington Capitals, 3.2 total. Heading into Pittsburgh, the Penguins, 3.2 total. Pittsburgh going Crosby, Rust, Ben Kindle? Yeah.
Ben Kindle, yeah.
Yeah. Malkin, Mantha, Novak, Tomasino, Koivunen, and Heinen. Washington probably running back what they had yesterday, since they blew the Blues out of the water with Ovechkin, Strome, Beauvillier, Wilson, Protas, McMichael. So Pittsburgh, top line, Crosby, Rust, Kindle, 17K, 10.4% projected ownership. That's another line in the 17K range. I much prefer to Boston. They're fully correlated. Something that Cliffy talks about recently is, because Logan Thompson started yesterday, it's Charlie Lindgren in net. Logan Thompson's been one of the best goalies in the NHL to start the season. When Charlie Lindgren's in net, Washington gives up almost, was it more than half an expected goal?
It's a half. Oh, I mean, since the start of last year, it's a half goal a game difference.
Yeah. So, like, Washington back-to-back on the road, like, Pittsburgh's not supposed to be a good team, but this top line fully correlated. Ben Kindle on the top power play, 2,800. Like we know Crosby and Rust have been good offensively for seasons, no matter who's on their wing. So I'm definitely interested in that Crosby Rust Kindle line, just because like on top of that, they're probably going to see a fair bit of that Strome, Ovechkin, Beauvillier, and like historically Strome, Ovechkin just have not been good defensively. So I do really like Pittsburgh 1 here. Pittsburgh 2 without Prezzo. Not as exciting with Tommy Novak. I like Tommy Novak, don't get me wrong, but like Brazeau was ridiculous to start the season. If they happen to get into your mix as a filler, that's fine. But they'll probably run into some worse 5-on-5 matchups than that Crosby line. So it really is Pittsburgh 1. On the flip side, there are a couple lines in that. I think there's only like 2 or 3 lines in that like 15 to 16K range. Washington 1 is one of them. Strome, Ovechkin, Beauvillier, 15,600, also 10.4% projected ownership. I think there's reasons to go back there. It feels chasey going after another Beauvillier performance, but he is only 2,900. And as we talked about yesterday, Ovechkin's best offensive numbers are with Strome. And like the only reason Pittsburgh hasn't been like getting blown out of the building is because their goalies have been ridiculous. And like, how long does that last? I don't know. Like for 15-6, I think they're fine. You want to go to Protas, Wilson, McMichael, because as you go down the Pittsburgh lineup, it gets, a little bit worse. Although like that Crosby line has been pond hockey. But like I think Wilson, Protas, McMichael are fine at 14-3. But really, my favorite line in this game is Pittsburgh 1.
Yeah, you talk about Pittsburgh 1 playing pond hockey. I was looking at Crosby and Rust this season. 62 shot attempts for, 70 against per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. That is absolutely wild stuff. Yeah, I don't mind Pittsburgh 1 because Lindgren is starting. It is. I just went and double checked since the start of last year. It's exactly a half goal per game difference, 2.8 versus 2.3 when Lindgren is starting. It's been even more drastic this season. Obviously, Lindgren's only played 4 or 5 games, so it's not quite the same. But there is a huge difference between the two, and it's not like the Caps are an elite defensive team. They're not bad. They're better than average, but they're not, certainly not Ottawa. But they're not like Colorado or Philadelphia or anything like that. Like they're not one of those teams. I've been impressed with Ben Kindle. I've only been able to watch a couple Pittsburgh games so far this season, but he always stands out. He's one of those guys, like he feels like he's going to be the digger for Sidney Crosby and Brian Rust, which is wild for an 18-year-old. But he's been pretty good, perfectly correlated on the power play. I'm not sure. I'm super concerned about that. Pittsburgh draws amongst the fewest power plays per game in the league, tied for the second fewest, in fact. But yeah, I really don't mind Pittsburgh 1. Like I agree with you. I'd rather play them than Boston. So they are one of those mid-price lines that I wouldn't mind playing. I don't have any confidence that the rest of the lines are going to stay together. So for me, it's Pitt 1. On the Washington side, Pittsburgh at times has been using they've been doing the Washington thing where they use the 4th line sometimes in a shutdown role. That makes me think that Protas, McMichael, Wilson line is going to see some of that Crosby matchup and see some of that Malkin matchup. And those are really, really good matchups. At least at 5-on-5. So Wilson, Protas, McMichael is probably where my interest is here. The issue is like they're 14,300. They're one of those no man's land prices, especially where like you don't have an $8,000 Zach Werenski or 8,200 Cale Makar or anything like that. On the slate here tonight, the most expensive defenseman is 6,500, and there are only 3 defensemen over 6K. It's like, why do you need 2 $15,000 lines? You don't, unless, you can pair them with Montreal or something like that, I guess. I would probably go to Wilson, Protas, and McMichael. That line so far this season, 3.5 expected goals, 69 shot attempts per 60. They've been perfectly fine. I think they're going to get good middle six matchups. I'm with you on Pittsburgh's goaltending. They've been great for the first month. I am not a believer in Archer Shelov's being a top 10 goalie in the NHL. Pittsburgh defensively worse than Buffalo that we were chastising earlier. So I really do have interest in Washington too. Washington 3, like a 2-man of Leonard Lapierre or something like that for your Dallas and your Vegas stacks and things. That's another one of those cheap duos that I wouldn't mind playing. So Washington 2, maybe Washington 3, and also Pittsburgh 1 out of this one.
Fun game. Let's get to the Super Bowl here for Frostback. This is actually a pretty important game on the slate, as it is. Anaheim Ducks with a 2.8 total heading into Dallas. The Stars have a 3.6. Dallas going Rantanen, Robertson, Johnston, Sagan, Bork, Steele. Ducks going Carlson, Kreider, Terry, Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca. All right.
And Hintz is a game time decision.
Yeah, that's kind of important.
It's honestly, it's one of those things that really sucks because he's a center. And, even if you put somebody, whomever in the utility, like there's a $2,000 difference between like going up to Rantanen or going down to anybody else. Like you could end up leaving a lot of money on the table.
Do you think if he plays that he just like takes Sam Steele's spot for now?
I think they go back to what their old lines were, which was, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it Hintz, Rantanen, Steele, and then Robertson, Sagan, Johnston or something like that, or maybe move Sagan to the third line and then put Bork with Johnston and Robertson. Yeah,
that's very annoying because just keep in mind this is a 9-game slate. Rantanen, Robertson, Johnston, 46.5% top 2 stack. Sometimes you don't see Colorado that high on a 4-game slate. That's nuts. 36.9% projected ownership. They have been excellent together. They're fully correlated. They play an absolute boatload of minutes. It's like, what do you say here? Like, they're the only line in that range at 22,200. You just have to wait for Hintz news, if you want to play them.
The one thing I will say is, one way or another, Robertson, Johnston, and Rantanen are all going to be on the power play together. So, even if you stack them and then Hintz comes in, you can't make a lineup without leaving thousands on the table. At the very least, you get some sort of power play stack out of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm fine with doing that. I just don't know if I want to spend $22,000 for 37% ownership. It's like one of those things where you can get in 2 of these lower owned lines. And if even if that Dallas top line gets 2 full line goals, they probably don't break the slate until they start getting those 3-point bonuses and those shot bonuses and all that. And Cliffy's talked about it all season. Anaheim is generally, they could just be a better team now. They have a better penalty kill. They've been pretty good defensively. I mean, I was
going to say,
let's pump the brakes there.
Okay, you're getting a little heated over there.
Yeah. We'll pump the brakes there. They've been better than they've been last year defensively. They're still bad defensively, but basically it's up to you what you want to do. In my process, in my single entry lineup, 30, more than 1/3 of the lineups are going to have some sort of Dallas stack. It's just at that price, unless they absolutely nuke the slate, you can leverage the field by getting 2 mid-range lines at lower ownership in there, right? So unless, one of them has a hat trick, someone has 3 assists and a shot bonus, and the other guy has a 3-point bonus, even it was the other night last night with Toronto, similar price. Matthews had a goal. Nylander had a goal and assist or something like that. And Nyes had a goal and assist. Nice night, not breaking the slate at that price. You know what I mean? So even with that kind of performance at 22,200, that's not going to break the slate. I'm leaning towards fading them. that top 2 stack is the biggest thing I've ever seen on a 9-game slate. So like they're definitely a great play here tonight. It's just a question of how you want to build your lineups. In MME, I think what I would do if I was making 150, I'd take a stand one way or the other. I'd be way under the field or way over the field. I'd have like 19% or like 51%, right? Like coming in at the field just feels like a little bit not a great play. So like I would probably take a stand one way or the other. In my single entry, I'm probably going to fade them. Sagan, Bork, Steele, if they're aligned coming in at 12% is a absolute no for me. But if Hintz plays, then you have more options. But yeah, as it stands, great play, probably fading though. The Duck side, honestly, to me, is more interesting. Not from like they're a better play. I'm not saying that, but like there's no ownership here. Carlson, Kreider, Terry, 16,300, 0.4% projected ownership. The issue I have with them is like it doesn't matter what line they see. They're going to be seeing a lot of Haskin and Lindell, and they've been absolutely disgusting. So I'm probably out on Carlson, Kreider, Terry. I'm in on Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca for the same price at 2% projected ownership. Like Harley Lyubushkin, like Harley's a great player, don't get me wrong, but like Lyubushkin, when he's on the ice, like the offense for Dallas just goes way down. And I think, Cutter Gauthier leads the NHL in shots on goal. He's like 58 shots on goal in 12 games. That line has been ridiculous. They're not correlated. You get McTavish and Seneca on one power play and Gauthier on the other, but Dallas generally has a good penalty kill. So I'm in on Seneca, McTavish, Gauthier here. 16.3 is fine. 2.1% projected ownership is nice. They're going to avoid Heiskanen. So, yeah, for me, it would be Dallas 1, Anaheim 2. Just be aware that Hintz could play, which would change up some stuff. But if it's Rantanen, Robertson, Johnston, they're easily the best player on the slate. It's just ownership and what they need to do. Like, it's like they need to break the slate, and then you need to find a cheaper line with them that does stuff. It's just a lot of hurdles for 1/3 of the lineups having them.
Yeah. For me, it's like, listen, they have the first, the second, and the fourth highest individual player projections on the board here tonight. Like, okay. To me, there's a reason to play them and a reason not to play them. The reason to play them, I think, is Hintz. And I think he plays tonight. One of the beat writers mentioned that they had a couple extra forwards staying on to do extra work after the morning skate, which usually means they're a scratch. If they're considering they already have like 5 forwards out of the lineup, if they're leaving a couple forwards on the ice, and Hintz leaves, to me, it tells me that Hintz is playing. And because this is a later start, you're probably going to get him at very low single-digit ownership. And that if he were to be in, he wouldn't have a projection like these guys, but his projection would be very, very high. So that's one reason to play them. I think the reason not to play them is that if Hintz is in, all of a sudden this goes from a 1-line team to a 3-line team, right? Like one of the reasons that made Dallas appealing over the last 4 or 5 games, whatever, was that they were all playing like 23, 24 minutes a night. That won't be the case if Hintz is in, because all of a sudden you have Hintz and Rantanen playing at the top. You got Johnston and Robertson beside them, and then you got Sagan with whomever they can find to play on the third line. Not that they would be playable, but they'll get 14 minutes or whatever. It just cuts into everybody's ice time at the top. So you would get Hintz at low ownership, but him being in the lineup would bring down the ice time of all the top guys, in my opinion. That's one thing that's kind of hurting. I think if you play Dallas, you make a lineup with Hintz. I honestly think that's the way you do it, is because I suspect he's going to be playing tonight. I think you put him in your utility, obviously, on DraftKings. And then if he's out, you can drop to a super cheap winger. You can drop to like a Maverick Bork or something like that, right? What I would do is I would make sure I have a Dallas defenseman in the lineup with them. I have one of Heiskanen or Harley, and then if Hintz is out, then I can, or if Hintz is in, I can just keep that lineup, or If I have to swap up to Hintz, I can swap my defenseman down. I can go from Heiskanen down to Lindell or something like that, right? And then I can swap from Bork up to Hintz. Like, that's just kind of the way, like, this is a late swap thing. I'm not just playing the Dallas top three and then just walking away at 7:00 Eastern. To me, like, you have to be on your phone or at your computer at 7:30 Eastern when warm-ups hit to make some late swaps. Like I said, I would probably make a lineup with Hintz in, or at least have a late swappable lineup where I can put him in to get him at extremely low ownership. This is still a very good matchup with Anaheim in town. They are better defensively. They're still not good. That's the way that I'm looking at it. On the Anaheim side, I agree with Gauthier, McTavish, and Seneca. We were talking before the show that Heiskanen-Lindell shutdown pair has been legitimately one of the best 5-on-5 shutdown pairs in the NHL this season. The second and third pairs behind them are literally like a full expected goals against or worse when they're on the ice than they are that top shutdown pair. And I think Gauthier, McTavish, Seneca don't see a whole lot of Heiskanen. That's really good news for them. 16,300. I think they're extremely playable. I kind of like Anaheim 2 here tonight. So Anaheim 2, and then whatever you want to do with Dallas, but like I said, I think you either have Hintz in your lineup in the utility, or you have a late swappable lineup by having an expensive defenseman that you could swap off of to move up to Hintz.
Yeah, I mean, just off that, like, if you have Hintz in there and he's not playing, you could just go to Sagan because he'll be on the top power play unit then.
Yeah.
Fun game. Let's get to This Game Sucks. Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.7 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.8 total. This game sucks. Like, I'm sorry. Flyers play at an unbelievably slow pace, and Nashville's one of the worst scoring teams ever. Nashville going Forsberg, O'Reilly, Evangelista, Marchessault, Stamkos, Haula. Yeah. Flyers going Dvorak, Zegras, Tippett, Couturier, Michkov, Brink, Konechny, Cates, Grabankin. So on the Flyers side, Tippett, Zegras, Dvorak, 12,400 coming in at 10% ownership. Like, they are a filler line that will get minutes. You know what I mean? So, like, I get it from that sense. Like, Pitt 2 is the same price. I much prefer this Tippett, Zegras, Dvorak line to Pitt 2. You definitely can throw them in your mix for filler lines, especially if you're doing some expensive Dallas or power play stacking, Vegas or something like that. So I definitely throw them in that mix. I don't particularly love 10% ownership on any Flyers line, but at that price, I think it's fine. Michkov one off, 2-mana Cates, Konechny, sure, but this game is just going to give you indigestion no matter what you do with it. On the Nashville side, so you have Washington one at 15,600. The other line in that range worth a damn is this Nashville one line. O'Reilly, Forsberg, Evangelista, 15,200, 6.1% top two stack, 7.7% projected ownership. They were creating last year too. Listen, Ray Rock, my man. Rangers are trash. Don't get me wrong. But, sometimes we just got to call a spade. The Nashville top line, they created last year. They're just not finishing. It's been a problem. Also, Philadelphia just loves to grind a pace. I know they had 42 shots on goal last game, but that's more of an indictment on Montreal's defense than Philadelphia's offense. I do like Nashville in this range. They're fully correlated, whatever that means. They have been creating 3.6 expected goals per 60 this season. I think I prefer them to Washington one in that range. It's just like, who else are you playing in that range? It's basically just them or Washington one. I'm fine with it. Just know that, like, all these guys will probably have 4 shots on goal and maybe you'll get an assist. And you have to be happy with it. But I do like Nashville one. I like both top lines in this game. It's just probably MME.
Yeah, I hate to say that I like Nashville, because I kind of don't mind them. It's 15,200 for a perfectly correlated top line that's going to play 17 to 19 minutes. They scored reasonably well last year whenever they did play together. They are not scoring at all this year. 2.2 goals per 60, shooting 6%. That's the thing, is like, even if they're shooting 9%, they are well above average offensively. Now, the Flyers have been a very good defensive team. Dan Vladar has been very good for the Flyers in net, so it's not really a great matchup. But at 15,200, it's one of those, like, if you're pairing a couple mid-price lines, I think they're very much in play here. On the Philly side, for me, it's probably Michkov, Couturier. I don't think they're going to see a whole lot of that Ryan O'Reilly line. And that's kind of the only line that I really worry about from any sort of defensive perspective. So Michkov, Couturier. The thing I keep thinking about is, like, maybe they break up these lines, but one way or another, like, I do think Noah Cates and Travis Konechny end up with the most ice time of any of their forwards. I don't know if that line is necessarily going to be any good, but if, 2.5% ownership for that trio, I think they're fine. Honestly, I think the one line I really don't have interest in is Zegras and Dvorak. But like I said, Couturier and Michkov, at least they're creating close to league average offensively, 2.4 expected goals, 58 shot attempts per 60 when they're on the ice. I say, like, Cates and Konechny, I think, will have the most ice time of all their forwards. So I do think the Flyers have two playable lines. I lean to Couturier and Michkov. My interest is honestly on the Nashville side. I don't think I'm playing Nashville here tonight, but they are certainly going to be in my mix, just because I'm a big fan of Evangelista and Forsberg. They played well so far together this season. 76 shot attempts, 4 expected goals per 60. We just need them to actually turn those expected goals into actual goals at some point.
Yeah, Michkov does look slow. I wonder, I know he had that ankle injury. I wonder if they put him on IR, teach him how to count calories and do some bag skating. But anyway, Florida Panthers with a 2.7 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.8. Kings did not have skate this morning. So that's annoying. Florida is going Rodriguez, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, Marchand, Lundell, Luster-Reinen, Bennett, Samoskevich, Bachwist. I would assume Kings run back Kempe, Kopitar, Mia, Fiala, Byfield, LaFerriere, but that's just a guess. There's a couple things here. We're talking about unlucky lines before the show. There's no line getting more unlucky than Rodriguez, Verhaeghe, Reinhart. They just are not finishing anything. They're creating an absolute ton. It's not the best matchup, though, because they broke up CC and Mikey Anderson. They put Mikey Anderson back with Doughty. They're going to see probably the Byfield Fiala matchup. They're fine at 16K. They're coming in at 1.4% projected ownership. It's not like they're going to run into a bunch of Cody Ceci here tonight. Who will run into some Cody Ceci and Dumoulin tonight is Marchand, Lundell, Luster-Reinen, 13,100, 1% projected ownership. They've been playing some serious pond hockey. But listen, we talk about the Blues third pair. If you're up late and want to watch some absolute awful defense, watch some Cody Ceci, Brian Dumoulin. I do have some interest in Marchand, Lundell, Luster-Reinen at 1%. I think Bennett, Samoskevich, same deal at 10.7. I think that Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Rodriguez line is fine. I just wish it was a little bit better matchup. Eventually, they're going to start scoring. When that is, I don't know. On the flip side, it's I don't really want to play an almost 7% line with Joel Armia against the Panthers. So it would probably, I'd probably go back to Byfield, Fiala, Ferrier at 14.8. The issue is they're in the middle of nowhere. So unless you're using them with Nashville or Washington or something a little bit more expensive. They're just in a weird spot. So, like, I don't love the matchup. The price is weird for this slate. So, like, I think the Kings are fine, but this game is more of MME for me.
So I do have a bit of interest, believe it or not, in a Florida power play stack. Like, you know, I think if you can do Lundell and Marchand and then throw in Reinhart instead of Luostarinen, or throw in Samoskevich instead of Luostarinen if you want to make a reasonably cheap stack. The reason I say that is Florida's top power play, I think we mentioned it on Tuesday, since they went to the 4 forward, 1 defenseman, has been considerably better. 110 shot attempts and 11.8 expected goals per 60. Those are actually like good or above average to good top power play numbers. Florida is drawing the 3rd most power plays per game of any team in the league. Only Anaheim and Minnesota are drawing more. And Los Angeles is giving up the 2nd most power play opportunities per game in the league. Only Winnipeg is giving up more. So Los Angeles is giving up the most power play opportunities per game of any team on the slate here tonight. Florida's power play has been a lot better. They draw a ton of power play opportunities. Like, you know, Reinhart is expensive and he's in a bad 5-on-5 matchup. So whether you want to add him in or not, I mean, I'll leave that up to, you know, the individual, but it's 14,500 for a Lundell, Marchand, Samoskevich stack. So like you can put them with your 17 and 18, like your New Jersey or your Montreal or your Boston or Buffalo or whomever you're playing. Like you can fit them in with those stacks pretty easily. So I don't mind some sort of Florida power play stack. Like on the Kings side, I mean, I guess it's Fiala, Byfield, Laferriere, 14,800. They haven't been generating a ton this year. Florida's still is not that bad defensively. The Kings power play really hasn't been that good. I don't have a ton of interest in the Kings beyond some MME. Like for like this, and in general, I don't have a ton of interest in this game. This is a 5.5 game. And it's not like the prices are super cheap, and it's not like we're looking at perfect correlation and all that. That's why I don't mind Florida, just because I think it's a good power play matchup.
Yep. We got an update actually with hints in, and that moves this next line into the number 1 spot for top 2. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 2.8 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.1. New lines for Vegas that just came through about 20 minutes ago. Eichel, Barbashev, Marner, Saad, Hurdle, Dorofeyev, Howden, Carlson, Smith. Tampa's probably still going to be running 11-7, I think. Kucherov, Point, Hagel, Cirelli and Gensel, Bjorkstrand, Gonsalves. I didn't really want to play Vegas here tonight. I still don't really. But like Marner moving back up with Eichel does give me some interest in that line. You know, with 11-7, maybe they'll run into Point, Kucherov, Gensel a few times. I don't know. That's kind of like the hopium, but like that's probably where I'd go. Like I know like Hurdle, Dorofeyev, and Saad have been really, really good. They were good last season. They haven't played too much together this season. Like I think they're fine. Like I'm not running out here to play Vegas here tonight. And it's kind of the same with Tampa, right? They're the Hagel, Point, Kucherov lines over 20K, 20.3% top 2, 11.1% projected ownership. It's not a good power play matchup. I mean, it kind of is, but like Vegas just doesn't take penalties. So I don't really want to spend over 20K for Tampa here tonight. 2.8 road total. Kucherov one off is fine. A Hagel one off is fine. Something like that. But like, it's nice to have a late hammer where you're not having to worry about, am I jamming in 19% Seattle won against the Sharks? It's actually a real good hockey game. It's just like, I don't know if I want to get to any of these lines.
Yeah, like I don't really have a ton of interest in this game. Here's a real fun fact, fun depending on your point of view. The Vegas top power play without Mark Stone is generating 45% fewer shots. Like I don't think like people have realized that power plays completely fallen apart since Stone got injured, from one of the best to below average. Tampa Bay's penalty kill typically pretty good. It's not like Vegas draws a ton of power plays anyway. So let's not forget, Marner started the season on the top line and got moved down because the top line with Marner wasn't very good. Like Marner and Eichel didn't really have a whole lot of chemistry. Now maybe they figure it out, but it's not like, Tampa Bay some sort of pushover matchup. Like, hate to keep beating down on Buffalo, but it's not like Buffalo's in town. Like Tampa Bay's like 7th or 8th by expected goals against at all strengths so far this season. So it's not really a great matchup for Vegas. Like I said, Marner and Eichel didn't work out earlier this season, and the power play's been considerably worse. On the Tampa side, these guys are fairly expensive, and Vegas has been pretty good defensively. And Eichel's defensive numbers got worse without Marner. It probably should get better again. It's just, whether they can figure out offensively. Vegas doesn't take a ton of penalties. That's where Tampa Bay really makes hay. I'm with you. I really don't have a ton of interest in this game in single entry. For me, this is more once I get to my 20 max and higher.
Let's talk about defensemen here. There's only 3 guys above 6K, and they're all in the mid 6s or lower. Dougie Hamilton, Jake Sanderson, Rasmus Dahlin. Listen, Rasmus Dahlin is playing the Blues. That's all I have to say. Jake Sanderson, I think, is in a fine spot. He's had a really, really good season. He just doesn't leave the ice. His ice time's ridiculous. So, I think he's fine. Like, Dougie Hamilton, last season, he was playing 17, 18 minutes. Regardless of if he's on the top power play or not, he's been playing 20, 21, 22. So I honestly think all 3 of these guys are in play. You also have the double Washington defense pair right below them. So there's definitely options, and it's not like you have to worry about if you're jamming in 8,300 Orensky and completely debilitating your salary cap. So I think this is a pretty good spot to spend up.
Yeah, there are 3 defensemen price 6K and above that are healthy. I noticed Jake leaving Roman Josi in the projections, probably staring at it like that meme of Wolverine laying in bed.
The Harry Potter mirror sees his parents.
Rasmus Dahlin has the highest overall projection and by far the highest point per dollar projection of those defensemen, I think, considering it's a 3.4 total with St. Louis in town. That makes a whole lot of sense. I think he's fine as a one-off. The other defensemen, Sanderson, Hamilton, I'd probably include them more so in stacks. I think Sanderson's okay as a one-off just because he does play so much, as you mentioned, but Hamilton certainly would only be in New Jersey stacks. Mid-price range, I do think there are some very interesting defensemen. Even with Keandre Miller back, I think Sean Walker is eminently playable. Thomas Chabot, not in a bad matchup, still in those mid-fours. I don't mind that. Thomas Harley, if you don't want to play Heiskanen, I think Thomas Harley makes a ton of sense. Thomas Harley's still blocking a ton of shots, and Anaheim's taking a ton of shots. You want more for a guy over 5K than just block shots, but he does provide that kind of floor, which is nice. Going back to Chychrun or Carlson for Washington, I think makes a whole lot of sense. Alexander Nikishin for Carolina, once you get under 4K, certainly. Esa Lindell, just because of the minutes and the fact that Anaheim shoots so much, he's definitely a block shot threat here tonight. Brady Shea, I hate to say it, but as long as he keeps getting the ice time he's in play. Jonas Brodin from Minnesota, block shot threat here tonight. Under 3K, our boy Artem Zub for Ottawa in that matchup against Boston. Certainly Alex Carrier still playing 20-plus minutes for Montreal. Michael Kesselring, not getting a ton of ice time, but shooting a fair bit so far since he's returned from injury. And Jake Middleton, another guy from Minnesota that, it's one of those things. Anybody facing Carolina, especially if you're under 3K and like to block shots, you're always in play. Yep.
Let's talk about goalies. I don't want to play any of them. Okay. We'll see you tomorrow. No. I really like Ottinger is 8,500. The Ducks are the highest scoring team in the league right now. I don't want to do that. Markstrom, 8,400. Yeah. I guess if you're spending up, the Carolina starter is fine just because Minnesota is just really, really bad at 5-on-5, and it's a bad power play matchup. I'd be more interested if it was Kochetkov than Anderson, but, beggars can't be choosers. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen hasn't been great this season, but the Blues have been an absolute tire fire. I guess that's fine. Saros is 7,900, I guess. My more interest in the cheaper guys again. Gustafson at 7,100 against Carolina. Come for the expected goals, stay for the shutout. Jakob Dobish at 7K. And Lucas Dostal at 6,900. He's going to see a fair bit of volume. Anytime a goalie's under 7K, you can have that discussion. He can, if he gets to the save bonus and doesn't win, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Top point per dollar value, I believe, is Darcy Kemper, which I think makes sense given Florida's trouble scoring. And, if they don't get there on the power play, I think Kemper could have a very good night. If Florida doesn't get there on the power play, I think the Kings could have a very good night. Jake Ottinger is tops by Raw fantasy projection, which, Anaheim does shoot a ton. They just also are scoring a ton. Like, that's kind of the problem. But I think Ottinger, if you have 8,500, no problem there. I do like some of the cheaper guys here tonight. Assuming Sergei Bobrovsky plays, I don't mind Bobrovsky going up against the Kings. Kings aren't super concerning from, they do score, but not a huge concern. Andre Vasilevsky, the Golden Knights do put up a fair amount of shots, but Tampa Bay's fairly good defensively. And I think Vasilevsky is projected for the third most saves on the board here tonight using Stochastics projections. And I was going to say Jeremy Swayman. Not sure I want to play Joonas Korpisalo. So I guess it's for the cheaper goalies. It's Bobrovsky or Vasilevsky for me.
Oh, Bob. I didn't even I just Vasilevsky at that price. I think, I don't really give a crap about goalie ownership, but he just sticks out like a sore thumb. And Vegas is kind of a similar team to Tampa where they could be fairly efficient at times, but at that price, I think you can for sure. We should be back tomorrow unless the GPPs are absolute crap. We will definitely be back on Saturday. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
Putting it out there in the universe, Luke Evangelista.
Wow. I like it. Just for my boy Frostback, because he's at the game tonight, Mikko Rantanen.
Just want to give Frostback a great night, eh? I like it.
Yeah, no, he's a Ducks fan, so Mikko Rantanen, he's going to enjoy the game. Hopefully he plays Ottinger so he can I don't know. But anyway, we'll see you tomorrow, possibly, definitely on Saturday. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.